If the temperature outside is above 35 degrees Celsius, it is a nightmare even in a well-ventilated greenhouse. If it is 20 degrees Celsius outside and the sun comes out, the temperature in the greenhouse immediately rises to 35 degrees. Hot air from outside is drawn into the upper part of the greenhouse. We have systems that allow us to accumulate all this heat. It is very convenient to lower the temperature. Despite the fact that the word greenhouse comes from the word heat, one should not neglect cooling the greenhouse. At least 5–7% of the opening surface should be open, and ideally up to 20%. Good afternoon, my name is Alexander from teplitca company, and today I would like to talk to you about greenhouse ventilation and cooling. As summer approaches and temperatures outside reach up to 30 degrees Celsius, greenhouses naturally accumulate heat and start to overheat. What can be done to lower the temperature in the greenhouse? Let me share some examples for both small and large greenhouses. I am currently standing next to one of our greenhouses, which measures 10 by 50 meters, and we have a ridge vent and side ventilation. I will explain each of these in more detail. For small greenhouses, vents or doors are essential during the summer months. These vents can be opened and closed, and if you install thermostats, this can be done automatically. Leaving thermostats installed means everything will happen automatically. In other words, you don't need to be there. The temperature rises, the thermostats open the small windows, and the greenhouse breathes. Ideally, the opening surface for a greenhouse should be at least 20%, but we have never been able to achieve this. It is too much opening. But in general, even 7% will be enough to cope with the volume so that the greenhouse does not overheat. That is, for example, one vent on one side and another vents here, and the air passes well, circulates. That is, the climate in the greenhouse is more or less normal. If we have a large greenhouse, we definitely need large vents that open and all the hot air naturally comes out from there. And accordingly, for normal ventilation, we also need side ventilation so that the side opens completely. You can put both automatic opening and, in principle, manual opening. That is, as you can see, our greenhouse can open up to 1.5 meters. That is, as I said, we open 20% of the area from the bottom. What happens? Cold air enters the greenhouse across its entire width and pushes hot air out of the upper end vents. As a result, there is a constant movement of air, and now it is actually cooler in the greenhouse than outside because it is calm outside and it feels hot, but there is a constant movement of air in the greenhouse and it is not as hot as here. Therefore, it is desirable to close the side ventilation with a mosquito net so that no insects or animals can get in. And so, in principle, with the help of a simple mechanism, if we need to, we can lower vents completely down for the evening period. Let's move on. Now I will tell you in more detail about other mechanisms for more effective ventilation work. If the temperature outside is above 35 degrees Celsius, it is a nightmare in the greenhouse even if the ventilation is good, so we turn on the fans and the fans additionally push out all the hot air. Plus, there is an additional movement of air in the greenhouse, and it's really like a breeze blowing, because all the air is moving. In the winter period, the ventilation system creates additional air convection, or air movement. These axial fans are controlled by a thermostat and turn on when the temperature rises above 30 degrees Celsius to circulate the air. Sometimes they run all day because the greenhouse gets hot and overheats, but thanks to this air circulation, it is actually comfortable in the greenhouse and you can go in to relax. There is another issue that we have implemented and that all greenhouse owners face in general. In the winter, when it is 20 degrees Celsius outside but the sun comes out, which happens very often in February, the temperature in the greenhouse immediately rises to plus 35 degrees Celsius. Even if the fans are running, they cannot bring the temperature down. Opening doors or vents is fraught with the risk of cold air suddenly entering the greenhouse and causing thermal shock to the plants nearby. It is also not recommended to open large vents because this leads to frostbite around the perimeter, and when the vents is closed, it simply freezes shut. In addition to the previously mentioned ventilation methods, we also install fans that draw air from outside into the upper part of the greenhouse. This is how it works. Cold air enters the greenhouse, is drawn into the upper part, and cools the air there. This cooled air then descends and mixes with the other layers of air, creating convection. As practice has shown, this method effectively lowers the temperature. If it is not possible to accumulate the warm hot air, and we have systems that allow us to do this, using the principle of a vegetative mass, then this method is a very convenient way to lower the temperature by drawing cold air into the greenhouse in winter. Therefore, when building a greenhouse, it is necessary to consider how the greenhouse will function in both winter and summer. If it is for summer use, the greenhouse must have good ventilation. For winter use, it is necessary to have a system for drawing cold air into the greenhouse and a system for accumulating warm air. These are side vents, various end vents, regardless of whether the greenhouse is small or large, but good ventilation in the greenhouse is essential. If you take, for example, a 4x10 greenhouse and you only have 2 vents in the end, one in each other, then in the summer period this greenhouse will definitely overheat because at least 7% of the greenhouse surface should be openable. Then there will be normal air convection, that is, movement and cooling of the greenhouse. Therefore, if you are building a greenhouse, be sure to think about cooling. The fact is that, for example, if you want to put a 4x8 arched gable greenhouse, you only have one vent on one side, another vent on the other side. Definitely this greenhouse will not be ventilated normally in the summer period. It will quickly overheat. You will have to come up with something, either a replacement net or something else. That's why you need to think about how to build a greenhouse correctly at the stage of construction so that the greenhouse functions normally in the summer period, in the warm period of the year. Here is the moment of ventilation, that is, natural and forced. All of this must be thought out. And despite the fact that the greenhouse comes from the word heat, that is, one should not neglect the cooling of the greenhouse, that is, natural and forced ventilation, that is, in principle, it does not matter, but the greenhouse must function in the hot period as well as effectively as in the cold period. This is its task. If we build a greenhouse, then it turns out that if we do not provide normal cooling, then we simply throw half a year out of operation of the greenhouse. As soon as the sun warms us up, this will already be mid-April, for example, the greenhouse will overheat if we have not thought out normal cooling or ventilation of the greenhouse. Therefore, be sure to provide either forced ventilation so that it can circulate at least 5 or 8 air volumes per hour, or natural ventilation, that is, at least 5–7% of the opening surface should be, and ideally up to 20%, then our greenhouse will work normally and will be normally ventilated. I gave an example of a greenhouse 4x8 or 4x10. Ideally, you should add at least 4 vents, and even better, 6 side vents. Then, when the sun comes out and it is plus 30 degrees Celsius outside, it will not be much hotter in the greenhouse than outside. Another factor that affects greenhouse cooling and ventilation is fogging systems. They can also be used or applied. When we turn on the fog nozzle shown here, the temperature drops by 5–7 degrees Celsius due to the fogging and the water. But it is worth remembering that when the temperature drops due to fogging, there must be good ventilation, because we will get the effect of a bath. That is, when we pour water on stones or on a stove, steam is immediately produced, the temperature drops, and it becomes even hotter, like a steam bath. Therefore, if we have fogging nozzles that perform the function of cooling, then we must also have some kind of ventilation, either natural ventilation, that is, vents that will throw out hot air, or forced ventilation that will supply and exhaust air. Then our greenhouse will also cool down normally. I hope my advice will help you build a greenhouse properly. If you have any questions, please contact the company Teplitca or visit our website teplitca.kiev.ua.